pointing at the human mind. And the fourth line is to see your nature and become Buddha. I imagine most of you have read these lines or heard these lines. You may have read numerous interpretations of them, but I want to talk about what they mean practically, again, from the standpoint of the path of practice. So the first line, separate transmission or tradition outside the scriptures, of course, does not mean that in Zen we negate the scriptures, don't use texts. As you well know, we do. We have thousands of them, from the sutras to the commentaries to the records of the Zen masters to the writings of people today. I wrote 2 books myself, so we use these things. But a separate transmission outside the scriptures means that we don't depend upon them as the primary source of practice knowledge. What do we depend upon? We depend on the living relationship with the teacher. So this first line, and the second line to some extent too, is pointing to the fact that Zen is a transmission or a tradition that is transmitted within human relationship. The relationship with the teacher is indispensable. It's not negotiable. It's the means by which Zen has always been carried from generation to generation. So our first calling in Zen, if we're interested in taking the path to deep fruition, is to find the person that we would like to follow as the teacher. And that doesn't mean it's going to be a perfect person. It doesn't mean it's someone who's going to be necessarily comfortable for us. But it should be someone who, of course, has a legitimate background and is certified in a legitimate manner as a teacher, but someone that we have some kind of affinity with, a kind of connection with, that we believe we will be able to practice with. That's the beginning of the Zen path in the truest sense. And the first of the Bodhidharma's lines point that out, that while we can go to books to generate an interest in Zen, or in the Buddhist teachings in general, and while we will always use them in various ways, including to check our experience as we go through the practice path and bring it to fruition, the most important thing, if we are truly serious about it, is to find the one person that we can practice with. And within that, the human relationship, the lifeblood of that training, can be transmitted to us. And the process by which that happens, we can talk more about that at some point, but that is the first line. The second line, not dependent upon words and letters, means that, again, while the texts may be useful for us to learn, it's the interaction with the teacher that will be the most crucial thing. And even beyond words and letters, the so-called mindless transmission, or mind-to-mind, not mindless, mind-to-mind transmission from the teacher, is what occurs in that relationship. It's the central part of that relationship. So I mentioned a few moments ago that the central practice of Rinzai Zen actually is Zazen, seated meditation, although everyone does it, and it's very important. The central practice is what we call Sanzen. Sanzen, the word translates as going alone or going to visit the teacher. Encounter, in other words, often called doksan. Doksan is another word referring to that kind of meeting. Within that meeting, we recognize that there's a kind of mechanism of sort of mutual vibration or resonance, the presence of a teacher who has legitimate realization through the power of their samadhi, meditative absorption, and the vibration of their energetic intensity, what we call in Japanese kiai, the energetic vibration, creates something we call the ba, or the field, or the presence of that person. And going in Sanzen or Doksan to meet one-on-one with that person is the place where we can start to catch that vibration, much as an adjacent string will start to vibrate if the one next to it vibrates on a guitar or something like that. That's the mechanism of not depending upon words and letters for the transmission of Zen. We depend upon the actual presence, the quality of the existence of the teacher. And over time, going into the crucible of that training, we start to vibrate in a similar manner. This is a mysterious part of Zen practice, which is not talked about much, but you can see it concretely if you look at something like the calligraphy of Zen teachers in the same lineage through the generations. they're very different people, but you'll start to see, even over the course of 7, 8, 9, or 10 generations, a similar kind of quality in the way of the expression of their art and calligraphy. I don't mean they look exactly the same, but there's energetically, and in terms of the flow and the feeling of the piece, some kind of thread is connecting them. And that points to not just technical transmission, but the kind of energetic quality that we can absorb from each other as humans. And that's really where Zen transmission comes from. So when we talk about in Zen, the mind-to-mind transmission, you may hear that kind of phrase. It doesn't mean some kind of psychic, I have something and I'm transmitting it to your mind like radio waves. It means that the two people, as they go into the crucible of exploring the Dharma over time together, over years, decades together, the student will start to vibrate the same as the teacher, this certain kind of energetic quality. So those first two lines, separate transmission outside the scriptures, not dependent upon words and letters, they point to the centrality of the teacher-student relationship. That Zen, the lifeblood of Zen, is transmitted in human relationship. And in that regard, I think Zen is closest to Vajrayana traditions, Tibetan Buddhism, for example, in the emphasis it places upon that relationship and the centrality of the teacher. Now, the second two lines, Bodhidharma's lines, are really going to point now to the kind of method of Zen. The first or the third line, the first of these last two lines, is directly pointing at the human mind. This is often taken incorrectly to be a general descriptor of Zen. Zen points to the human mind, but all Buddhism points to the human mind. All Buddhism says that what we call Buddha ultimately is found nowhere else but here. What this line actually means, or what it describes, is the activity of the teacher, the activity of what we call direct pointing, not a description, but a concrete activity or method to cause the student as quickly as possible to arrive at what we call kensho, the recognition of one's true nature. Otherwise, what we call awakening, the rising of the recognition of the intrinsic wisdom or the experiential knowledge that what we call Buddha is actually this. It's the Zen teacher's job to cause the student to arrive at that experience as soon as possible in the beginning of the path, because that experience of awakening, which all the great Zen masters in all Zen lineages arrived at, is in fact the entrance gate of Zen. It's not the culmination that comes later. It's the point at which we can say, you're no longer just doing Buddhist practice, now you're doing Zen with a capital Z. And all the subsequent practice after that takes that awakening as its foundation. So direct pointing at the human mind, this describes the method of Zen, the activity of the teacher within that close relationship to point out to you exactly what is meant by Buddha. Not intellectually, not as a conceptual understanding, but an experiential, liberative arising of knowing. I say it's a knowing or a knowledge, but it's not a knowledge of an object of the senses or an object of the mind. It's a liberative sort of gnosis, knowledge, knowing that arrives through the activity of the teacher and through our own practice and confirms to us what the Buddha experienced himself. That's the beginning of the Zen path, just the beginning. The final line, seeing your true nature, become Buddha. Seeing your true nature is that moment when that happens. That's what we call kensho, which literally translates as to see your nature. Awakening, bodhi, if we like to use the Sanskrit word, or the arising of a prajna, the intrinsic wisdom which you do not lack and don't need to receive from someplace, but simply need to arrive at experientially yourself and give testament to from your own experience. And then the final words, become Buddha, describe what we do after that. So after you enter the gate of that awakening, as I said, that's just the beginning. You're far from done. All of the subsequent practice after awakening takes awakening as its basis, stands upon it, and consists of many practice methods to revisit it again and again, to familiarize yourself with it, to refine it, to make it more profound, to start to dissolve the, what we call jikke, karmic traces, or habitual delusion, obstructions that we all have in our mind and in our body, because we don't separate those so much in Zen, body and mind. And over a long period, decades, lifetime of training, to bring all the activities of body, speech, and mind into accord with awakening. When we are able to rest seamlessly in the sort of upwelling of that liberative knowledge, that awakening or recognition of our true nature, and are able to embody it completely through the special methods of the Zen path, only then can we say we've arrived at the culmination of becoming Buddha. So all of that, which I just dumped on you, is as brief a description of the method or the intent and the method of the Zen path that I could give. Separate transmission outside the scriptures, not dependent upon words and letters, describes them. How the lifeblood of Zen is made to live in each generation, passed on through the generations. And then the second two lines, direct pointing at the human mind, describes the real intent of all Zen methods, including in particular the activity of the teacher to cause you to arrive at awakening. And then finally, seeing your true nature, you arrived. And become Buddha is the lifetime of practice after awakening. And I always like to point out that most Zen books like to talk a lot about the awakening part. One of the most famous Zen books in the West, Three Pillars of Zen, for example, is famous for its many descriptions or chapters where it has descriptions of people's awakening experiences. But what a lot of Zen books don't talk much about is the real meat, the real important part of the path, which is what happens after that. In fact, Torei, famous Zen master in my lineage, student of Hakuin, famously said, I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact quote, his exact words, but he basically said, it's relatively not so difficult to arrive at awakening, but it is exceedingly difficult to arrive or attain the accomplishment where all of our activities do not depart from awakening, where we seamlessly embody awakening. In other words, we bring it to full fruition. And he says that nevertheless, although this is exceedingly difficult to do, please make great efforts to do so, because if you fail to do so, if you stop just at an awakening experience, shallow or deep, but you don't truly embody it, ultimately it will become just a memory. It won't be a lived reality for you. And in that case, all of the efforts, the sacrifices of the great masters through history will have been in vain and wasted. Those are inspiring words to me as we take in Buddhism, as you well know, we take the four vows, Mahayana Buddhism, we take the four Bodhisattva vows as the foundation of our aspiration and practice. That is what can serve to motivate us and remind us that no matter how profound my experience is, until I seamlessly do not depart from it, ultimately 24/7, even in my sleep, I have not attained what we call Buddha. And I have to continue practice deeply. So that's my intro lecture. What is Zen? Do you have any questions about anything about that? I could take a question or two before we get into the fun part. Okay, we'll move on then. Okay, so what I really want to do is give you a sense of how Zen is what I call a psychophysical practice. I think most people know that in Zen we use the body in particular ways. For example, when we sit in Zazen, we have a particular posture we use. Everyone sits in Zazen, seated meditation, right? But even if we sit in Zazen, if we're not sitting in Zazen in a particular way, it's easy even for that activity to become a primarily intellectual or psychological undertaking. And in that case, it's not Zen at all. We have a saying in Zen, which I'm fond of, I always use it. It talks about how we transform our way of experience. What's the most direct, most effective way to change our experience, our existence, to change how we see, in other words. And the saying is that you cannot wash off blood with blood. So if you imagine you have blood on your hands, or you could say mud, whatever you like, and you try to wash it off in a bowl of the same substance, it doesn't work. It's futile. In the same way, we say in Zen that to try to change your mind using the mind is essentially as futile. It just doesn't work. Deluded mind is the least qualified thing to change itself. And this is also one reason we need a teacher, because being rather deluded, we are the least qualified people to self-prescribe practices for ourselves. But the Zen approach is not like that. The Zen approach is what I would call a stream of yogic spirituality. And by yogic, I mean, of course, that great stream of spirituality coming out from the Indian subcontinent going back 5,000 years. But what marks that approach to spirituality is the recognition that the body, the breath, the subtle energetic system, and the mind are not only completely connected, but we can use them to affect one another. If we're not going to change the mind with mind, wash off blood with blood, what do we use? In fact, using the body and the breath are the most direct and quickest ways to change our condition of mind. So that's what I would call the Zen approach. We have to affirm always it's a yogic approach. No matter how much we may understand the Buddhist teachings about things like emptiness and so on, if we don't bring them into experiential realization in the body and not just the mind, then it's not actually Zen. By way of example, there's a famous episode. It's actually Mumonkan, episode 40, or case 40. Do you guys know the Mumonkan, the collection of koans? One of the koan collections, famous book. Case 40 talks about the students of Hyakujo, and they were trying to choose one of them to become the abbot of a new temple, new monastery. And in the Mumonkan case 40, what's related is the culmination of that encounter where one of them, I think he was the Tenzo, the cook, if I recall correctly, kicks over a water pitcher, and by doing so, demonstrates that he's the one who's most qualified. You may know this episode. What happened before that is not in the Mumonkan case 40, but it's related in the records. There was a first test before the water pitcher was set out. And in that first test, all of the students of Hyakujo were lined up. And the person who was trying to pick the new abbot said, each of you take a few steps forward and cough deeply. Based on that, he picked who was the most qualified. What could that possibly mean? How could that possibly be relevant? That the manner of taking a couple steps forward and coughing deeply could reveal something about someone's realization. If you read that episode, it's really quite interesting, and it bears examination. From the standpoint of our practice, it's quite clear, because we can tell from the appearance of someone's eyes, from the way they stand, from the way they walk, from how they breathe, from how they cough, if they have embodied the principles of Zen practice, if their realization is not purely just psychological, intellectual, but has brought about the transformation in the physical form that yogic spirituality must demonstrate. In fact, in the Zen practice, even the things like the angle that one's navel points, we can tell from that if the person has integrated the Zen manner of breath cultivation that leads to the most profound samadhi or meditative state, which leads to the ripeness for awakening. We can see over time change in the practitioner's body from this yogic way of practicing, and which makes sense because we're doing stuff with our bodies. Just as if you're a runner, your body will change when you run, right? If you're doing Zen practice in a particular way, the way that is transmitted in the Rinzai Zen, we start to see changes physically in the body. I think this is something a lot of Westerners don't grasp. And for that reason, a lot of Western Zen practice, to my mind, tends to be primarily psychological, intellectual in content. So anyway, this is what I want to stress. As I give the instruction I'm about to give in meditation, I want to stress how we're using the body, the breath, the cell energetic system with the mind, in unity with the mind, to avoid that futile undertaking of trying to wash off blood with blood. So for that reason, I will give the very small details of Zazen posture. Maybe you've heard them before, maybe you haven't, but if there's something that you haven't heard and it's useful to you, that would be fantastic. So let's get right into it. And I want to start actually not with the posture, but with the breathing. I know most of you are sitting like at desks or chairs and things like that, but I think we should be able to do this stuff. I may show you some different options of how you can practice this stuff, but everything we do, I think you can do seated wherever you are, whether you're on the floor or in a chair. So I leave it to you, how you wish to arrange yourself. But let's talk about the breathing side first. In the Zazen instruction, we talk about the three main elements, which are of course, the posture of the body, how we hold the body, and why. Most importantly, why. Most people tell you how to sit, but they don't tell you why we do that. Why all of those details are present. Second is the breathing. And when we talk about breathing, we're also talking about the subtle energetic system of the body, or the beginnings of how we cultivate that in Rinzai practice. And then finally, we talk about the method, which is the mind. What are you doing in your mind in unity with those things, not separate from them, as you sit? Okay. So today, I'd like to start with the breathing. Usually I start with the posture, but I think the breathing might be the good way to begin. What I could say, first of all, is that foundational to Zen as it was transmitted to Japan, late Sung Dynasty Chinese Chan masters who came to Japan and transmitted Rinzai Zen. One of the things that the ancient records, ancient means medieval, 1200s, those records show us is that those Chinese monks and masters and their Japanese disciples all had a very profound concern with what we call cultivation of the tanden, the navel energetic center, and the cultivation of a particular breathing method centered there. The purposes of that kind of breathing are many, but in a nutshell, I could say that the way of breathing that we cultivate in Rinzai Zen training, when it's brought to fruition, there are a couple of profound effects. One is that the so-called vital winds or energetic currents of the body are made to gather at the navel energetic center. And when that happens over time, they start to radiate through the body in a manner which ultimately, and this is a very deeply mysterious thing I'm just touching upon lightly, ultimately that allows us to integrate our realization of wisdom, our awakening, with the physical form and to liberate the body itself. We have to say it's not just the mind that needs to be liberated, but the body-mind, the whole thing. And there is a way to subtly liberate the body using the energetic winds, the radiation of energetic currents through the channels of the body, upon which that liberative wisdom, in a sense, rides. Or it's another way we say it in Zen is the realization wisdom must penetrate your bones. It's a famous saying. This is not poetic. This is literal. We have a way to train the breathing to cause that to happen. It's the manner which was transmitted, again, from those Song Dynasty masters who came to Japan. The other thing is we have to say is that when the breathing is trained in that manner, it gives access to the most subtle and the most deep state of meditative absorption that's possible. When the energetic system functions in that way, and I don't know why this is, but we just know that it's true, we're able to enter into a much more profound meditative state, and the state which is much more ripe for awakening. So it's, in a nutshell, this kind of breathing has two purposes. One is to help us enter a meditative state. The other one is, after we have awakening, to help us to cause that to penetrate the body. In those ways, it's a foundation, a pillar of the Zen path as transmitted in my lineage. All of which is to say, we're not going to do a whole lot of that today, but I want to give you the foundations of that. the way of breathing we use in Rinzai Zen, it takes a lot of practice. It's, I usually say it's unnatural. It's not something that your body knows how to do. You have to learn how to do it. It takes practice. But what you can start to do as a foundation of that, and what I would call an absolute prerequisite for Zazen in any tradition, is to be a natural diaphragmatic breather or belly breather. This is just the natural human way to breathe. It's not a Zen way of breathing per se. But if you do not breathe in this way, your Zazen, even if after 10, 20, 30 years, will not come to fruition. Because if we don't breathe in that deep diaphragmatic manner, the gross sort of chatter or thought activity of the mind will have very little chance to settle down. Also, breathing in an incorrect manner that's centered in the chest rather than in the belly causes tension in the body. It's caused by tension, and it also causes tension. So we can actually be sitting in Zazen for decades and yet breathing in a manner which is a closed loop of tension and discursive thought. The breathing is one of the main things which can cause that if we do it incorrectly. So after that long introduction, I want to teach you, give the basic instruction in the diaphragmatic breathing. So if you're sitting up, that's great. All I'd like you to do is take your two hands, put one on your sternum, put one on the belly below the navel. You may, of course, you may want to sit a little upright for this. I've kind of conditioned you a little bit on what I'm looking for, so I probably ruined it, but without trying to control your breathing at all, I'd like you just to take a few deep breaths. Let's take 2 or 3 right now. As you do so, can you please observe where do you feel the movement? Is it in one hand? Is it in the other? Is it in both? And so on. Just take a look without trying to alter anything. Is there anyone who has no movement at all anywhere? If that's the case, we can fix that. You can always raise your hand. Okay. I can see many of you. I don't know how many folks are actually online right now with us, but I can see at least one gallery of you. How many of you felt the movement primarily in the lower part, in the lower hand? Would you raise your hand for me? Okay. How many felt it primarily in the upper part? Anyone? How about both? A little bit of both. Okay, good. So if I take a truly deep breath, both hands will move, but the movement should start in the lower hand. It should initiate there. Why? Because of how the body works. The diaphragm is the main muscle we use to breathe, correct? When the diaphragm contracts, it goes downward. That creates a partial vacuum in the lungs and pulls the air in. That's how inhalation works. That movement of the diaphragm downward is what causes the stomach to come out. You know, we often say breathe to your stomach or imagine the air is filling your stomach. We know that you don't have lungs in your stomach. The movement of the diaphragm is what makes that roundness or fullness, that expansion happen. Now, if you are a person that has a little bit of tension, especially in the solar plexus area, if you are someone who has done a lot of physical training, like sit-ups, for example, where you've really tightened up the abdominals, that's another cause. If you're someone who has a lot of emotional trauma stored in the body, or physical trauma, injury, anything, it's quite possible that this movement in the lower part of your body is limited. You may have not much or even no expansion of the hands when you inhale. Some people get to a point, in fact, where they have none, and they breathe in a manner that the upper hand is the only one that moves. Instead of the hands coming out like this, you'll see this if you watch my shoulders. People breathing with an upward movement instead of an outward movement. Because if you bind up the belly and the diaphragm, your body will find another way to inhale. it starts to recruit the shoulders, the chest muscles, the intercostals, all that stuff. Right? That is the manner of breathing which causes tension. It's caused by tension, it causes tension. When we breathe in a shallow manner, centered in the chest, we start to feel anxious. We also experience that the gross thought activity increases. It is very difficult to bring Zazen to fruition breathing that way. So you get the gist of it now, right? Even if you're someone who breathes that way, no problem. You can change it quickly because your body will remember how to breathe correctly. When you were young as a child, you breathed differently. That's what we're going to practice now. So would you please put both hands below the navel this time? And it's good to press in a little bit. So you give yourself a little pressure or something to press against, I should say. Really so that you can feel your hands are there. When you inhale, maybe I can turn sideways. I've been doing so many of these classes recently. I joke I have to get like a rotating stage or something. I can just spin quickly. It'll make my life a lot easier. I hope you can see with the ropes, but this is my stomach, obviously. When I inhale, can you see the hands move? That movement, right? Rather than the shoulders going up and down. This is just what we call belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. So let's try it together. Just put your hands below your navel. Press in a little bit, as I said. And when you inhale, see if you can make them move. When you exhale, just relax. You don't have to do anything. Let the hands fall. You stay relaxed. Just do 4 or 5 breaths that way. That's belly breathing. That's diaphragmatic breathing. So that's, as I said, that's not Zen breathing. It's not the cultivated breathing that we eventually use in Rinzai Zen practice, but it is sufficient to do Zazen. If you are a person who doesn't breathe that way naturally, you've discovered that you breathe primarily centered in the chest. How do you change that? Do this exercise we just learned. 5-10 minutes a day. Anytime during the day that you're even at work, sitting at a desk or something, and you feel anxious or your mind is spinning, put your hands on your stomach and breathe to your hands. Just do this basic belly breathing. In Japanese, it's called fukushiki kokyu, which means belly breathing. So we just say belly breathing usually. You can practice that one anytime. The other way I'll mention to you, not just show it to you, you don't have to do it now, but if you have a lot of tension in the body, it's really useful to practice this lying down. And the way to do that is simply, you can see me. You can lie down with the knees up or out, doesn't matter, as you wish. Put your hands on your belly below the navel. And now you practice pushing the hands up towards the ceiling. At whatever rate feels natural to you. You don't have to force it or control it in any way. But if you practice that every night before you go to sleep, you're going to be lying in bed anyway. It's a great way to work this breathing practice into your daily schedule. 5-10 minutes practice breathing to your hands. You'll fall asleep faster. You'll sleep deeper. Your mind will be more calm. And then gradually you start to integrate this way of breathing into your daily life. When you go about your daily activities, physical work, or that's what we use in the monastery, what's so-called samu, work practice, is one of the best places to work on cultivating the breathing, because you're exerting yourself, chopping wood or raking or hoeing the garden or picking weeds or whatever. And while you're doing that, you bring your mindfulness, your awareness to the belly, and you make sure that you're maintaining that way of breathing as you go about your activities. In no time, you will reintegrate or you will relearn how to do it, and it will become your predominant way of breathing. So that's the belly breathing. That's sufficient for our instruction today. But even if you never do Zen meditation or never do anything else I'm going to teach today, if you work on that, you're going to change your life. It's going to be useful for you and your health if you're not someone who's already a belly breather. Just to briefly say that the Rinzai Zen method, the Tanden Soku that I mentioned, the method which causes the energetic currents to really forcefully gather at the navel energy center and then radiate through the body, that unnatural way of breathing, which is built upon this belly breathing, in a nutshell, looks something like this. Maybe I can lie down again. This is just for curiosity's sake, but you can learn this eventually. The belly breathing you just did, you can see my hands, right? When you inhale, the hands went up. When you exhale, the hands dropped. In Tanden Soku, we could inhale, but when we exhale, the hands don't drop. This roundness or fullness remains. Of course, I'm breathing, I'm talking, in sitting, in chanting, in work, in any activity I do. I'm still functioning, but we never allow the so-called breath power, the firmness or roundness at the belly to completely collapse. And there's a sort of complicated body usage that helps set that up. Using the musculature of the perineum, the pelvic floor, we close the anal sphincter, gentle pressure from the diaphragm, essentially serves to create a gentle pressure in the whole lower trunk, not just the belly. And we learn to hold that seamlessly in an increasingly more subtle manner, eventually till it's more an energetic feeling than a physical usage. And that is the practice of Tanden. So it takes some years to master that. If any of you have experience in some Tibetan Buddhist traditions, the practice of so-called vase breathing is almost identical to that. So it's one of the interesting commonalities between the traditions. So that's something for the future. But let me stop there and see if anyone has any questions about this basic belly breathing or any problems we could troubleshoot, anything about that before we move on. Yes.
I was noticing, like, when I do belly breathing, especially when I'm tense, I often like burp a lot. Is there something to do about that?
I'm sorry, you often, did you say burp a lot?
Yeah, I often burp a lot. Yeah.
Really? No one has ever asked me that my entire life. I mean, it may just be that you have some gas, and that by using that movement, it's being, made to move. So I wouldn't say that the belly breathing causes that at all, but I would say it might be showing you that you might have to tweak something about your diet or something like that. It's pointing out to you that you have that gas down there, and because the belly is moving, it's forcing it to be released. So yeah, of course, release it, just burp, but I can't say that the belly breathing causes that. Does that make sense? Yeah, I'm trying to think, if I drank I don't drink soda or pop or anything like that, but if I drank like a fizzy beverage and then did belly breathing, I could imagine that would be uncomfortable. So probably that's what's happening. Okay, anyone else? What a great question. I love it when I get a question I've never had before. That's amazing. Okay, so yeah. I kind of, okay. Sorry, yeah.
Do you want to go, Shika?
Yeah, Shika.
Yeah, thank you. So I find that I have a lot of, I guess, tension in below my diaphragm, and this sort of imbalance in a sense, not all the time, but right now, of energy between my center or my hara and the rest of myself. So
you feel like things are not unified or connected somehow?
It feels like the energy is being pushed just downward a little bit, differently than it might otherwise be.
I don't have any particular advice for that. I mean, the belly breathing, which I just taught, is not, as I said, it's not really a Zen method. It's really just the correct human way to breathe. Mm-hmm. The diaphragm should move relaxedly. So I would say err, if you practice it, err on the side of using no tension, no force at all. You're just teaching or retraining the body to breathe in its most efficient, natural way, not trying to add something new to it. So I'm not really sure what the sensation is you're having, but it may just spontaneously resolve itself. If you're not breathing deeply and diaphragmatically, as you relearn how to do that, probably the tension in various places will start to release. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. It hasn't been my experience, but it makes sense.
Yeah, practice more. My teacher recommended we should practice this kind of breathing 10 minutes a day, but consistently, and then you start to get some relief. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, if there's no one else, then we'll move on. Okay. All right, so we are going to take a short break at some point. We're coming up 10 minutes before the hour. So let me get through the physical side of the posture. And then we'll take a short break, and then I'll give you the final piece of the puzzle, and we'll actually sit together for a little while, and then we'll go forward from there. So if you can focus on this part, as I go through the details of the physical posture, this is the part that requires maybe some sort of acute attention. All right, so again, apologies to those of you who have extensive Zazen experience, but I'll speak as if all of you are beginners. And we're just going to go through the points of the body from bottom to top quickly, then I'll take some questions. But of course, as you know, if I'm sitting on the floor, I'm using what we call zafu, which are the cushions that go underneath my butt. Rinzai Zen tradition, we tend to use this kind of cushion. I know the round ones are much more common, more like the Soto Zen style. We tend to use something like this, or even a futon, which is folded over. But I like these because you can adjust the height quickly. If you need to change your height, you can just add another one, take another one away. So this kind of thing is useful. But the reason for those, of course, as you know, is because they just help you sit up straight. If you didn't have them, you tend to fight gravity going backwards. So they help us to have a neutral posture aligned with gravity. For the leg position, again, as many of you know, if we can, we like to sit in a half lotus or a full lotus, but I sat for 25 years before I could sit in full lotus. It's not something you need to beat yourself up about. It's something you build up to gradually. That being said, there are incredible benefits to these traditional yogic asanas. I mean, these are yogic postures. They take time to master. There are tremendous benefits to them, so they're worth working toward. But if you have some injury and you can't do it, or you never get to sit in full lotus because of that, it's okay. It's no problem. We have many other ways we can sit, and including sitting in chairs. But sitting on the floor in this traditional way, the manner which we usually advise beginners to use is so-called agura. Some people call this Burmese posture. Although I have no idea why, actually. I've tried to track down where that term comes from. No one can tell me. But in Japanese, we say agura. It's just like a general cross-legged posture. The only thing you don't want to do is cross the ankles in the common manner, because that's going to cut off the circulation. So if you can, you sit with one foot in front of the other like this. I think you can see. And it's also very common for the knees to be up in the beginning. What that speaks to is hip flexibility. Over time, these will go down. If you want to, you could even put cushions underneath them to support them while you sit. And then over time, gradually loosen that or lessen that. And gravity will accomplish that for you. So nothing to worry about. That's the foundation, the base that we use, how to arrange the legs using the cushion. But what I really want to get to now, I'll turn my revolving stage again, is something that is a huge confusion for folks and also sabotages their meditation. And that's the pelvic alignment. I hope you can see with my robes here. This is my sacrum, right? This is the bone at the base of the spine. Modern people, for whatever reason, because of the way we use our bodies sitting in chairs all day or whatever, if you tell them to sit up straight, most people will do this. They'll thrust the chest out and arch the back and create excessive curve or lordosis in the low back, the spine. If you'd like to try that right now, would you do that with me? What some people might call sort of a military posture. Thrust your chest out and arch your back as much as you can. Now take a deep breath to your belly the way we practiced. You should find it more or less impossible. That's the problem with pelvic misalignment. The diaphragm can't move. Of course, you're also going to have back pain. If your habit is to use your body that way with too much curve in the low back, you're going to blow your discs out. You're going to have herniated discs at some point. There's no doubt, because the spine is doing this and causing them to bulge. So the most important thing, the foundation of Zazen posture, is not just the legs, not just the cushion, it's the set of the pelvis. And what that means is, so this is my pelvis, right? I should not have a forward tilt, arching the back. I should allow the sacrum to drop. Can you see that, the camera? It's a very small movement from here to here. I'm not slouching, okay? And I'm not doing anything with the pelvis except letting the musculature of the low back release. But the effect is that the sacrum sort of drops, does this. And from there, I can stretch up tall into the Zazen posture in a relaxed way. You don't have to be ramrod straight, be natural. But that slight backward tilt of the pelvis, it's not a tilt, really. It's a neutral position. It's the natural neutral position. It's just not in an aberrated position of excessive curve in the low back. When we do that, now I can breathe to my belly. And it also means that structurally, the upper and lower body, so from the waist downward and from the waist upward, the two halves of the body, structurally they're integrated. Why is that important? If the body is structurally, physically sort of separated or cut off at the waist, the deep meditative absorption, the condition we call samadhi, cannot manifest as easily. For that condition to manifest, the body has to be brought into a condition of integration and balance, and then unified with the breathing and unified with the method, which we're going to discuss later. All of those things have to go like this. That's what brings out the samadhi most quickly and most profoundly. But if the body is in an aberrated posture, in this case, separated at the pelvic girdle and not allowing deep breathing, it will not be able to come out. So that's why, I said it's possible for people to sit for 20 years sitting in sort of an aberrated posture and be wasting decades of their life, not bringing the meditation to fruition. To me, it's a tragic thing. But the simple thing to remember is that the body has to be aligned. And aligned doesn't mean straight in some aesthetic, rigid ramrod form that we have in our image of in our heads. It means with structural integrity and relaxed. And again, the way to do that, I think you get the point, is let the sacrum drop. We say turn your tail, let the sacrum drop, relax your low back. Just that small movement of release rather than arch. It's going to be so crucial. I can't stress that, to you how crucial that is for Zen practice in general. Why? Again, because what we do is a psychophysical discipline. So if we're going to use the body for our training, we need to think about how we're using the body in the most efficient way. Any questions about that? Okay. All right. So if we establish that base, I want to stress that this pelvic alignment is the base. One thing I do want to mention about this further, sorry, I'll belabor this point some more. If you read Zen books, especially ones that have been translated from Japanese or originally written by Japanese masters, you will often see the advice, when you sit in Zazen, push your hips forward. Have you seen that or read that kind of thing? And that's how it gets translated. Push your hips forward. Problem is, Western people think the hips are the crests of the iliac crest, the wings of the pelvis, rather than the joint down here. So when they hear push your hips forward, they automatically start to do that arch I talked about. The other thing is that the word translated as hips is usually koshi, Japanese word koshi. Koshi doesn't refer just to the hip joints, it refers to the whole lower trunk, including the low back. So to push your hips forward, in other words, to push the koshi forward, doesn't mean arch your back. It means let the sacrum drop and push forward, the same way you would engage your body to push something heavy out of the sumo. It's, in other words, the advice to push your hips forward is often taken in a manner precisely opposite from what was intended. And you will find people who sit for many years with the backs arched, thinking that that's what their masters told them to do, and unable to breathe. Again, to me, that is something tragic. So I always harp on that point, but it's amazing how a simple mistranslation can be something that can hinder our practice if we're not aware. So I think you get it. Let's let the sacrum drop and let the pelvis set. Okay. Going up the body now, we'll talk about the so-called mudra or hand position, and there are several. I think in the Soto school, most commonly, the right hand is on bottom, and you'll see this kind of mudra, right? The Rinzai lineage, we tend to use a different one. So if you'd like to try it, by the way, this is perfect. This is fine. If this is what you're accustomed to, you can continue to use it. We use it too, no problem. And in fact, in some other traditions, even the hands change, which one is on top. But in the Rinzai lineage, distinctively, we tend to use this one. If you hold out your left hand palm down, would you please? And then the right hand comes from above and grabs just around the tip of the thumb. Not the whole thumb, just the last joint. And the fingers of the right hand are snugly closed. They're not tight, of course, but you keep them closed. Now the fingers of your left hand line up. Finger to knuckle, finger to knuckle, finger to knuckle with the right. You got that? So that makes kind of this snug ball. That's what goes right here. It's used in Chinese Chan, it's used in Rinzai Zen. It's just a common mudra we use. It has a very solid, energizing feel to me. I will use this one. Some people call this the cosmic mudra, right? I'll use this one in the summertime because it's cooler. Wintertime, I like to use this one because it's warmer. So you may change, it's no problem. You can also change which hand is on top. There's no problem with that stuff. But that's how we do it. We hold out the left thumb, we grab from above, and we line up the fingers with the knuckles, and we put that right here. And the palms have to remain up. Please don't turn them in towards your body. That causes a tension in the shoulder girdle. Yeah, so correctly done, the palms should be up. I'm going to give you one secret orally transmitted detail too. This is not something we usually, again, small detail, but it's not something that's always talked about. So I did that, I grabbed my thumb, right? And I lined up the fingers. Now my left pinky is actually allowed to drop down. That makes sense? That has a subtle effect on we would say, on the energetic flow of the body. But you can play with that. If you drop that pinky down just to let it rest there, it has a subtle effect that is beneficial for the meditation practice. So that's a Rinzai Zen way to hold their hands. Going up the body, solar plexus stays soft and relaxed, chest is relaxed, shoulders are relaxed, chin is level. The tip of the tongue touches the roof of the mouth, just behind the two front teeth, someplace, just any place on the palate. Make that connection gently and maintain it. And this is common in most Zen traditions. But now finally, the last crucial thing I want to talk about is the eyes. In Rinzai Zen, as some of you may know, we sit facing the center of the room. Soto Zen, people tend to sit facing the wall. It doesn't matter. The eye instruction should be the same if it's correctly given. And that is this. Although the eyes are gently downcast, as you know, we generally leave them open. And I can blink anytime I need to, I'll just be natural. But the eyes are gently downcast, we usually say about 45 degrees. That's not fixed, we can play with that, but that's a general rule. But here's the crucial point. I should not stare or focus my vision intently on the spot where the gaze rests. If I use focused vision, foveal vision, the traditional comment is you will have more gross thought activity. I have been told, I don't know if this is true, that the brain science tells us focused orthofoveal vision increases frontal cortex activity. I don't know, but the traditional advice is that experientially you will experience more chatter. The way we use the eyes rather is different. We activate the peripheral field. So although my eyes are gently downcast, actually I can see across the room there, I can see there. I'm not using my eyes differently, but I'm attentionally, I'm extending my awareness to fill that whole field, side to side and top to bottom. It looks like I'm looking at the floor, but if someone were to walk in the room over there, 10 yards that way, I would immediately know, because my awareness is filling that space. So it's a soft gaze. We sometimes say it's a sweeping vision, panoramic vision. The traditional instruction is that you should use your eyes as if you're looking at distant mountains, the distant mountain range. The fifth patriarch, before the famous sixth patriarch, fifth patriarch in Zen advised his students, wrote, or it's recorded that he said, if your mind is spinning, chattering, look out at the horizon and visualize the number 1. Now, the number 1 in Chinese is a horizontal line. So it's the same instruction. Look out at the horizon where the earth meets the sky and do this. And you will immediately be able to experience a state of clarity. That's how we use the eyes in Zazen. The habit for modern people is at some point to start staring at the spot on the ground or the wall, because we spend most of our day staring at screens now. It becomes habit. You have to try to maintain this expansive view. If you're not sure what I mean by expansive view, we have an exercise for this. Let's do it together quickly. Can you put your fingers behind your head like this where you can't see them? And just look across the room from you. You don't have to look at the screen because you can hear my voice, I guess. Wherever your gaze rests, on the wall in front of you or whatever, rather than staring at that spot, I want you to try to spread your vision out a little more expansively. And as you do so, slowly bring both fingers forward until they're both just on the edges of your peripheral field, so you can just see both of them. Does that make sense? I'm bringing them forward around my head until I can just see both of them. And I stop there. Now spread your vision out as much as you can to look at both of them simultaneously. And now maintaining that, let your hands drop, but don't lose that expansive view. Can you experience that you can actually see the whole room simultaneously? Your mind is not fixating, your vision is not focusing on any one thing, but you're actually aware of all of it. Do you have that sense? Okay, so here's why we do it. I'd like you to follow along with me for a moment, okay? Once more, look straight ahead, please. If you want to use the fingers to establish that way of seeing, that's fine. If you don't need to, that's fine too, but I want you to spread your vision out in the manner we just practiced. When I say go, I want you to do it as intently, throwing yourself into it as much as you can. Okay, is everyone ready? Establish that vision. When I say go, spread it out and keep it spread out as much as you can, just for a few seconds. Ready? Go. Okay, stop. During this few seconds, were you thinking much? Or were you relatively clear? Relatively clear. Was there any negative or afflictive state, emotion arising? Was there any sense of really of I? I mean, you're still there, still aware, but did you feel very strongly that sense of I-ness? if you can catch this way of using the eyes, what you will experience at those few moments, some of you did, it looks like from the way you're nodding and so on, that the gross thought activity should drop away. Maybe not completely, and certainly not the subtle thought activity, but the gross levels of chatter should be less. You shouldn't have a lot of negative, afflictive state in that sort of expansive awareness. There may be some background of tone of something, but it shouldn't be as fierce as it often is. And there should be a lessened sense of that dualistic way of seeing where everything is self-referential. I'm looking at the universe. There's less I. There's seeing, but there's less I'm seeing. This is this way of using eyes is one of the methods of direct pointing. So I talked about at the beginning of the class that the Zen teacher has many methods of body, mind, speech, and so on to cause the student to have a particular experience. If you had an experience during those few seconds of increased clarity, what I want to tell you is that that is your natural clarity. It's yours. The method didn't give that to you, it just revealed it. And you can revisit it anytime you use your eyes that way. And that's why we use the eyes that way in Zazen. It's so crucial. If you had an experience of lessened I-ness, yeah, that's true. Again, it's revealing that to you. It's revealing to you a truer way of seeing. I don't say it's awakening. I usually describe it as sort of a recognizing your natural clarity, but it's true. If you're really sharp, you could have Kensho at that moment, just from the river. I don't know if anyone had a deep Kensho enlightenment experience just now. If any of you was really sharp, it's possible you could. I was not that kind of sharp person, so please don't feel badly if you're not. But do you all understand the way we use the eyes now in Zazen? I think this is one of the things which is not widely taught in Zen circles, unfortunately. But we have the oral instruction passed down for a long time, how to use the eyes in Zazen. And not just Zazen, when we do Kinhin, walking meditation, same thing. In fact, I train myself to use the eyes that way all the time. If I have to focus on something for a fine task, I do, but otherwise I try to maintain this. And it's also just a wonderful practice of environmental or situational awareness. You immersed in the environment and one with it, with a lessened sense of I. You feel more connectivity. It's really wonderful, amazing. So that brings us to the close of the physical part of Zazen. We have the solid foundation, we have the cushions, the pelvic tilt or release, the settling of the sacrum, you remember, so crucial, so that we can then use the belly breathing we practiced first. The hand position, remember that one, although if you're used to another one, perfectly acceptable. Chin is level, the tongue, of course, gently touches the palate. The eyes are gently downcast, but we maintain that expansive view. That's the Zazen posture. Let's sit for exactly 1 minute this way. If you're in your chair, that's fine too. Just sit that way without moving. I didn't give you the final piece of the puzzle, which is the method, what we do in the mind. But let's just sit this way. We'll see if you have any questions about it, and then we'll take a short break. Okay. Okay, any questions about that? Pretty basic, right?
Tina, you wanna go?
Yeah,
Looks like we have two.
please.
Tina?
Hi. While meditating, can I close my eyes?
So in the Zen tradition, we typically do not. And there's a couple of reasons for that. It's a very good question. One is that the closing the eyes will tend toward fixation on the so-called inner world. Will tend to drift off into fantasy or thought or memory, that kind of thing. We do have some practices, and I'd like to finish with one of them today, which is a visualization, where we do close the eyes, and that's no problem. But for the basic meditation practice, we tend to keep the eyes open. The point of the practice is ultimately that line between so-called inner world and outer world. We have to realize the illusionary nature of that. It becomes more permeable, eventually drops away, and we will not be able to say, I'm in here inside my head and the world is out there. We don't experience that way anymore. But that experience is hard to arrive at if we close off one of the senses. So we keep the senses open and alive. Same goes for hearing, same goes for smell, same goes for touch. We encompass all of that in the meditation method. That's why the eyes should be open. The other classic answer is that Zen practice is for use in our life. So we want it to be something that functions the way we usually are, which is with our eyes open in the world, right? So that's a short answer for that one. Yeah. Was there another one?
Hi, I was wondering with the peripheral vision thing, is it normal for like when you said go as hard as you can, my eyes kind of cross-eyed a little.
You've got all the good questions today, Kendall. As hard as you can might not be the most skillful way to say it if I said it that way. What I meant was to really throw yourself into doing it non-distractedly, but it doesn't mean you should be creating any physical strain with your eyes or using your eyes physically in a really different way. So they shouldn't cross. You don't have to do something unusual with them. It's more an attentional shift rather than a physical change, encompassing the whole space with your attention rather than mentally focusing on one point. Just making that shift in your attention will cause the eyes to do what they need to do. You won't need to think about it. Okay? But don't be cross-eyed, for sure. Okay, Aaron, should we take maybe a 3-minute break, do you think, before we go forward?
Yeah, I think just if you need to use the bathroom, shake out a minute.
Okay, we'll see you all back in 3 minutes.
Mhm.
Thank you. Until we start again, if there's anyone who's here, if you have any questions or anything, I'm happy to talk to you.
Tina, you can just go for it.
Oh, okay, sorry. Hi, I've been sitting wrong as I'm watching your video. I've been arching my back all the time. And while I was meditating today, I actually heard a crack in my back. So I'm seeing that I sat wrong. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Yeah, it's really common but easy to fix. Easy to fix it once you bring your awareness to it. So hopefully you'll have some change.
But the thing is, like, nobody told us, you know, they say how to sit, but nobody really checking on our form. We have to learn it ourselves. You know?
Yeah, I happen to think that that's criminal.
Yeah. So
I feel very strongly that that's a problem in Western Zen, that insufficient instruction is given in the actual practice methods. And if you get me going on that, it's going to take up the rest of the class as I go on a rant. So I'll hesitate. I'll hold back.
yeah, so it is very, I think it's important to start correctly. You know, 5 years I have been sitting wrong, and my breathing is very upper chest with my shoulder going up, like you said, and just I have to do the exercise to breathe underneath by my belly, and I've been trying that. It's really hard. I know that I'm breathing wrong when I sing, and I'm almost feeling dizzy, you know, because the breathing technique is not correct.
Did you say when you sing?
Yes. When I sing, like when I try to sing, and then I guess my breathing is not correct, I feel dizzy, you know, so that means I'm not breathing through my abdominal, I'm breathing through my chest.
Yeah.
So
actually, singers, people who are actually trained singers, I've had students who are trained opera singers actually, and they learn methods of breath cultivation that are not so different from what we do in Rinzai Zen. So it's actually really interesting, you know, beyond what we did today. But the other thing I want to say is if you go on YouTube and just search for belly breathing, you'll find probably 1,000 videos, people teaching more or less what I taught today. So you may even find more exercises, but the main thing is just to retrain your body to have the breath centered here. You'll be able to fix it quickly. I'm really confident. So when you do that, you're going to have a big change in your body.
thank you.
So enjoy.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Try.
Herschel?
So I don't know how much time there is for the break, and you can answer this or not, or return to it. Since you're speaking to lay people, what is the place of discipline in lay practice, and how often people relate to that?
You know what? That's a great question. Let's pick that one up at the end during the Q&A.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know if what I could answer will be useful to you, but I have a few thoughts about it, I think.
Okay.
Thank you. That's a good one.
Is there time for one more now, or should we move on?
Yeah, maybe a quick one, sure.
Okay. Chika?
Thanks. So when we're focusing the eyes, we see both sides of, we can see both sides. How do you settle your attention sort of in the between those, while keeping both?
It's not that you're looking at one side or the other, you're just encompassing all of it, including it in the stream of sensory awareness or input that you're receiving. It's not that you're, okay, basically this way of seeing is to break the habit of fixating visually and mentally on one spot. Doesn't mean we're fixating on something else. Instead of that, we're simply releasing and allowing ourselves to encompass all of it simultaneously. That can take practice if the mind's habit is to fixate. Instead of fixating on a point, maybe there will be a kind of person who then tries to fixate on this side and then they try to fixate on this side, then I should focus on the middle. That's just more of the same habit. Just relax the eyes. Don't use them to look at anything in particular, but allow your awareness to encompass all of it simultaneously. That's the only instruction I could give. It may take practice though. If you're a person who's used to really focusing habitually for much of your day, the way most people do these days. You know, I mean, I have my phone right here. How many people spend most of their day doing this? That's a habit. So it may take time to change that habit, that's all. This is a way of using your eyes which your body knows. This was my belief, this was the predominant way of using the eyes for most of our evolution, because if you're walking across a savanna or through the forest, trying to be aware of something that may want to eat you or looking for something to eat, you use your eyes this way, and then suddenly there's a flick of a deer's tail, your mind catches it. But if you walk through the forest looking from bush to bush or tree to tree for something, you will never see anything. Our ancestors, even today, people who are hunters, for example, people who go into dangerous situations habitually, know to use this way of vision. It's a way of vision which melds our awareness with the environment. So what I'm trying to say is your body does know how to do it. Have that confidence. And if you practice it a little bit, you're going to be able to catch it. It's in your genes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, should we start again? Oh, it looks like there's one more question. Am I mistaken?
I think that's just Herschel didn't put his hand down.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's Herschel. Okay, we'll get you later, Herschel. Okay, let me give you the final piece of the sitting instruction. So we talked about the breathing, belly breathing. We talked about those fine points of posture. It's great that this is being recorded. You can always review it if you forget something. Now, the method we use most commonly in the Rinzai tradition, we have many methods we use in Zazen, from formless methods to methods which have different objects of meditation, visualizations, internal energetic cultivation practices. There's many things. Of course, koan meditation is very famous in the Rinzai Zen, but it's just one of many methods. The one we use traditionally in the beginning is a breath counting method. This is not unfamiliar to many of you, but it could be our way of teaching it, might be interesting too. So what's called in Japanese susokukan, which literally translates as counting the breath. The instruction is like this. As you're sitting and breathing in the manner we practice, we set up the focus or the attention on the exhalation in particular. So when I inhale, just mentally to my, or just, I don't do anything. I don't count that or anything. I just remain present and relaxed. Vision spread out, breathing relaxed and deep. But then as I exhale mentally to myself, I'll count 1. I don't just count 1 and then start thinking something, okay? I unify the silent mental count with the entire length of thread of the exhalation from beginning to end. 1. You know, we don't make noise when we do it. We don't use our finger when we do it. I'm just doing that for you. You get that, right? I taught this class not too long ago to someone and the whole room started doing this. I said, no, this is just for illustration purposes. But the point is that you stretch the thread of the count out to follow the whole exhalation from beginning to end. With great ferocity. With ferocity doesn't mean tension. It means with all your might, with all of your being. You throw yourself into being aware of simply that 1. Of course, my eyes are open, my ears are open. I'm encompassing everything that I'm aware of in that. So in a sense, we can say the whole room is the 1 count. And then at some point, the exhalation turns to inhalation, and I will just remain present with that. At the end of the exhalation, there tends to be a brief moment of clarity. So that moment, I just sort of rest easy in that. And as I inhale, remain present. And then the next one, of course, is 2. and 3, and 4, and 5, and we go 1 through 10. So we go 1 through 10 over and over, then go back to 1. The point is, at some point, your mind is going to wander or drift. Thoughts will arise, emotions will arise, thoughts of the past, thoughts of the future, chatter. There's no end to what bubbles up in the body mind when we meditate. And that's okay. The purpose of the meditation is not to somehow be miraculously free of thought. But we're training the mind not to habitually fixate on what arises by giving it an anchor. So when you notice that you have become distracted, at least the next exhalation, 3, you come back. And that process of becoming distracted, but noticing you're distracted and remembering to come back to the count on the next exhalation, that is the practice of retraining your habitual fixation, your habit of jumping into whatever comes up in your mind. So we say that you have to throw yourself into that count with great, I use the word ferocity, great effort with your whole being. I usually use this kind of image. If you were walking on a tightrope across the Grand Canyon, how would you focus on each step, the placement of each foot? We could say that nothing else would exist for you but that. Nothing else in the universe exists but that. If you can count your exhalations 1 through 10 like that, as if each one was your last one on earth, then you will catch the intent of this method. Here's what I want to say further about it. Again, our emphasis in Rinzai practice is that it's a yogic spirituality. We're using the whole being and the body. You have to find a way to breathe the count with the whole body. Counting the breath is how we usually describe this method, but it's an unskillful way to say. Because if I say I'm counting my breath, I've already set up I and an object, mental object, the breath, or my watching of a physical process, separate from me, in a way, separate from my mind. Subject, object, I'm counting the breath. And from the standpoint of samadhi, meditative absorption, or just the fruition of our practice, that's nonsense. You're reinforcing the habit that you're trying to cut, the self-referential subject-object way of experiencing. So instead of saying count the breath, I always say breathe the count. This is different. What it means is, I hope you can catch the subtle difference in the words, but what it means is that with your whole body-mind in a unified way, you're breathing the count rather than setting up the count as something that you're mentally watching, or the breath as something that you're mentally counting. Does that make sense? Breathe the count with your whole being. So when I sit here, of course, again, eyes of the vision spread out. There's a lot going on and it takes time to unify and integrate all that. But with my whole frame, with all the tissue in my body down to the toes and fingertips, I have to feel the breath here, the vision out. What? And within the space of just a few breaths, I mean, I've been doing this method for a long time, but within the space of a few breaths, I cannot say, am I counting the breath? Is the wall counting the breath? Who's counting the breath? Where is the breath? Where am I? I cannot concretely say. All I can be aware of is that there is a counting. And of course, attentionally, I'm throwing myself so much into that there's not the arising of gross thought and chatter and distraction. That's after some practice. But in the beginning, you're going to fall away from that. The body and mind will split. Mind and the object of the concentration, the breath, will be separate. All of that is constantly what's happening. Thoughts will arise, distractions will arise. Your job is simply to notice that, and then with all of your body, remember to return to breathing the count. 3. And at least for some few moments, with each exhalation, you will start to enter a state of clarity. And then eventually we can start to sustain that. And then eventually, seamlessly, it's sustained. And then eventually we don't need to count, we drop it away completely. You can use the breath counting method your whole life and never use another method. It's completely sufficient for awakening. That being said, in the Rinzai Zen Path, we typically, once someone is able to bring the breath counting to some fruition, the samadhi condition starts to manifest. Usually that's when we give the first koan. We start to use that method, which is a method which is directly cutting to reach that point of awakening directly. But this is the practice of Susokokan, breath counting. But I hate that name. I like to say breathe counting. I don't know what to call it in English, but I always say breathe the count, don't count the breath. I hope that's useful advice to you. So I think the instructions are clear. Probably you don't have any questions about what to do. You just breathe you count the exhalations with all your might, body, mind, 1 through 10, and then go back to 1. And whatever arises in your body, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, whatever arises in your mind, doesn't matter what it is, pleasant, unpleasant. You don't push anything away. You don't seize upon anything. You just roll it up into a ball and burn it in the furnace of the count. Go back to the count. And during that time, we try to discipline ourselves a little bit. Of course, your foot may fall asleep. You may have an itch you want to scratch, but we don't move. That's just another phenomena or sensation that we roll into a ball and throw into the count. So the count encompasses everything. And the way to make that happen is by doing it with your whole body, unified with the breath. It's very interesting, very profound method. It seems simple, but one of the oldest Buddhist methods, as you probably know. One of the most profound. Really interesting. So, should we do it together for maybe 15 minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes at the end for some questions and things? I did want to give you one final practice today of short visualization, so let me try to save time for that. Maybe we'll sit for about 10 minutes. It's not so long, but then you can go do it on your own, of course. Sound good? Okay, please settle yourself as you wish. If you're sitting in a chair, we don't lean back against the chair. We lean a little forward so that we're upright, and from the waist up, the body's the same. Nothing's different. We try to keep the feet flat on the floor. So, okay, these are called taku. This means get ready to sit. But the purpose of the sound is also, in the oral instruction, to cut the stream of chatter. It's a sharp sound. So when you hear that sound and you momentarily feel a little shock or a sense of clearness, try to rest in that. Then I'll ring the bell 4 times. By the time the 4th bell, which is a resonant sound, which carries, has started to come out, be into your count. So I've actually just told you how we use these 2 instruments as methods of direct pointing. Another subject for another time. Okay, ready? Let it go. Okay. Everybody okay? I'm sorry it's such a short sit, but I spent too much time talking today. Let me quickly give you the practice I promised I wanted to give you guys. I don't know, some of you may have learned this in the past if you watched some other stuff that I did or if you read my books, but there's a famous practice in the Rinzai Zen lineage called the Nanso no Ho, which is a visualization. You can use it in Zazen posture. You can also use it sitting in a chair or lying down. It's a practice that washes the energy, so to speak, energetically from top to bottom. So let me just give that to you, and you can use it in your training going forward if you like it. So for this one, if you want, you can close your eyes. I'm going to guide you through this visualization, and then you'll be able to do it on your own. So we should relax, of course. We should breathe deeply and naturally, as always. But what we should visualize, as Hakui taught us, is that suddenly upon the crown of the head, there has appeared a mass about the size of an egg of a wondrous healing substance. And he describes that it's soft like butter. You can visualize it in any way that gives life to it. Perhaps it's a little warm. Perhaps it has a wondrous scent like sandalwood or incense, whatever you like, but it's a kind of a panacea composed of healing herbs and just a wondrous healing substance. A mass of it just plops on the top of your head. So you just for a moment try to give life to that and imagine you can feel that. And then we visualize that the heat of the body has started to melt it so that it starts to run down over the skin of the scalp, but not just on the surface, also through the body. So actually down through the scalp, the brain, behind the eyes, and so on. We just slowly, at whatever speed feels correct to us, visualize that it's permeating and moving downward through the body. And everywhere that it goes, whatever we're holding in the body and mind, whether that's a physical disease, scars, emotional trauma, negative stuff, anything, that stuff which is like a frozen, dirty ice within the body-mind, wherever this healing substance meets it, it melts it and causes it to run downward like dirty water and flow downward. And what's left behind is a very open, free feeling. The tissue is relaxed, the muscles, of course, everything's relaxed. The body becomes warm and clear. You might imagine clear, even like crystal. As the substance moves down, that's the effect that occurs. So it moves down into the face, behind the eyes, the scalp, the back of the head, releasing the tension that we store there. Down into the jaw, moving down into the neck and throat. Everything's opening up and releasing. The shoulders, of course, lots of tension there. It releases and drops over the shoulders and down into the upper chest. And again, also inside, so into the heart, the upper arms. Flowing downward into the lower arms and the hands, even to the fingertips. They might start to feel warm as this wondrous substance moves downward and clears everything out. Into the middle of the body, the solar plexus releases, the mid-back releases, moving downward into the guts, the belly, the low back, that sacrum, which we talked about, relaxes. Into the buttocks, the hips, the upper legs, front and back, moving downward, the knees, the lower legs, and finally to the feet, even to the tips of the toes and down to the very soles of the feet. And everything which has been sort of loosened up and melted as the substance has moved down through the body, runs out the bottoms of the feet, again, like kind of like a stream of dirty water just is ejected. And we're left with the whole body feeling warm and relaxed, open, soft. Again, you could visualize it's clear like crystal clear. And Hakuin says at that moment, we should visualize further that it's as if we're sitting in a hot bath up to our waists. So from the waist downward, there's an intense permeating warmth, a bath full, again, of kind of healing herbs. That warmth is penetrating us and making us feel warm from the waist down to the feet. We just rest in that feeling for a few moments. And that is one cycle of the visualization. You would then, whenever you like, when you're ready, visualize that another ice cream scoop of the stuff lands on your head. And then you would repeat the visualization. As it melts, it permeates down through the body, washing and clearing and warming and opening all the tissue, the whole body, mind, down to the feet. And you can do that as many times as you like. That's a quick instruction, only a few minutes, but that's the Natsu no Ho, famous visualization, energetic practice that's part of the Rinzai lineage and taught by the great master Hakuin. So we use this one typically for any purpose. It's a great practice to do every day for your health, especially if you feel anxious. We also use it as a kind of practice to prevent problems when we're doing certain kinds of internal energetic cultivation. We always finish with a Natsu no Ho because it tends to balance the body and settle anything that might have gotten sort of kicked up inappropriately. So it's a great practice just to prevent issues like that. But for you, if you were to do Zazen and then finish by doing this visualization a few times, maybe for 2 or 3 minutes, you will really have great effect, great benefit from it. So quickly, I wanted to share that one with you guys. Natsu no Ho. Natsu means butter, soft butter, or ghee. Ghee, like in Ayurvedic medicine, is a pure substance. Yeah? So that's where that name comes from. So that's all the instruction I wanted to give today. I'd like to open it up for questions. I know we have one from Herschel, but anything else, any questions, comments? If you want to say what your experience was breathing the count, how successful that was for you, I'd love to hear that too. I just want to open the floor to you guys now. So please raise a hand if you have something you'd like to say.
Maybe we'll start with Herschel to follow up from before.
The role of discipline.
Yeah. Would you like me to say more, or should I repeat it, or do you remember?
Yeah, but why don't you repeat it, and I want to make sure I fully address it.
Yeah. So you've used the word severe to describe your training, which doesn't seem inappropriate based on what I understand about traditional Rinzai training, but given that you're speaking to a group of lay people, how do you understand the place of discipline in lay practice? And yeah, that's basically what I wanted to ask. How do you understand is maybe wrong. It's just like a little bit of context is like I spent 2 years at the monastic academy and recently left, and I'm finding myself more or less as a layperson, and like recently received advice from a lay practitioner, like, oh, you should just kind of like calm down about any sense of discipline with respect to practice. You should just like do stuff as it occurs to you. Don't really try to make anything happen. You know, if you find yourself doing shikantaza, that's great, but like you don't even need whatever. And I'm curious if you could speak to that. That's at least where I'm coming from, but.
Okay. You know, in what intensive or so-called severe or disciplined practice could change according to the person. Everyone has to look at their own conditions and their capacity, their limitations and their strong points, and has to practice appropriately. So that's where the relationship with the teacher also is really crucial, is to help have someone who can help prescribe those things. But to me, I don't like to think about things in terms of discipline so much as aspiration or motivation. Why are we practicing? We have to have a clear answer for ourselves. What is the purpose of practice? What is the fruition of practice? If I'm doing something like breath counting, what are the signposts that practice is coming to fruition and actually deepening? If I don't even know those things, it's hard for me to judge what I should be doing. And ultimately, I have to say that, if I accept the Buddhist analysis of the human situation and the Buddhist description of what a wise way to use one's life is, lay or ordained, it doesn't matter, but to use one's life to get to the bottom of what a human being is, and to be able to personally give testament to that intrinsic wisdom we call awakening. If I'm truly devoted to that, if that's my aspiration, then I have to look at it from the standpoint of, well, how do I accomplish that? What's the way to structure my life to do that? And we classically describe that in terms of the 4 vows of Bodhisattva aspiration. Aspiration to awaken not only for oneself, but for others. So I cannot say what's discipline for you or what you should do, right? But I could say that we have to, each of us have a clear answer. What is my life for? How do I want to use it? And that may condition whether I choose to be ordained or lay, how much I choose to practice every day. That's one side. The other side is I should have a clear understanding what the path of practice is. These are practice methods. They're correctly instructed or incorrectly instructed. They're brought to fruition or they're not. And there are classical signs of fruition we should know. The path of practice is a path that has progression on it. So if I'm not clear what that is, or if no one ever taught me, and they told me just sit and something will happen, and I don't know what's supposed to happen, that's a problem too, and we should seek to clarify that. So we should seek out the teacher we can work with, who can help us to clarify that. If I'm doing something like the breath counting, which we did today, I should know what's supposed to happen over time, and how that is part of an overall coherent path of practice that has as its goal the ends of the Buddhist teaching. So, no, for myself, okay, my personal answer for myself is, I knew from a young age, as someone beset with existential panic and angst, that I wanted to devote my life to some way to get to the bottom of that. So I've structured my life around practice. Some people may try instead to structure practice around their life. That's another way to do it. But from the standpoint of the Buddhist teachings, we have to find a way to have our life center on practice, encompass all of our activities in practice, if we like to use our life in the most wise manner. Again, that could take many forms. That could be encompassing your family life, your wife and kids in practice, your spouse and kids. That could be encompassing your career within practice. But we have to be honest with ourselves. Am I really encompassing all of my activities within my practice, or am I structuring my practice around my activities in a way that fits my convenience, preferences, comforts, fears? As human beings, we're very good at projecting our own preferences, comforts, fears, limitations upon the practice, instead of using the practice to shine a light on those things and challenge them decisively. So when I say intensive practice, severe practice, what I mean is an uncompromising approach of doing that consistently, rather than using the practice as another identity, another activity that I do along with my other activities, something that I don't ever truly throw myself into with all my being. If we're doing that, throwing ourselves into it with all our being, it doesn't matter if we're lay or ordained. There could be many expressions of that, depending on what fits the person. But to me, it all boils down to, are we doing that? And what's my aspiration? Why? Why do I want to practice? Do I have a clear aspiration, and how profound is it? Maybe in the beginning, my aspiration is nothing more than I want to feel better and I don't want to be so stressed out. That's okay. But ultimately, from our standpoint, again, the traditional standpoint of the Buddhist teachings, that aspiration has to deepen to become something bigger and to encompass other people besides me. That's the Bodhisattva idea. So if someone's moving in that direction and really working to integrate all their activities as part of that mission, so to speak, To me, that's intensive practice. But the exact form it would take, I couldn't say. Like how many, we generally say Rinzai Zen, no, you should sit 2 hours a day. If you really want to bring your sitting method to profound fruition quickly, 2 hours a day, please sit. Maybe someone doesn't want to do that or can't do that. They should do what they can do. They should do their best. But we have to be honest with ourselves, what is my best? If we're doing that, then like I said, I don't care what kind of clothes you wear, whether it's lay or ordained or how you wear your hair. If you're doing your best and you have a clear idea why I'm doing it and what is it I should be doing, how do I practice, in other words? What are the details of practice? How do I bring it to fruition? If we have all that stuff, then I don't think we need to worry how severe or how intensive it is. We're really committed to it, throwing ourselves into it, doing our best. That's enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I can only answer from my own experience, right? It may not fit you at all, but that's what I learned from my many failures, that kind of thing. Anyone else have anything?
Chika?
Thanks so much. Sorry, I know that I have so many questions, but I was thank you so much for that beautiful experience. It was I really like what you said about throwing oneself completely into it, doing it with all your might. And I wonder, my question for you is, why stop at 2 hours?
Why stop at 2 hours? You don't have to. You may be a person who decides, you know what, practice is the primary activity that I think it's the best use of my precious short human life is to just do as much practice as I possibly can. Then do that. But the classic saying, you should practice for 2 hours a day is kind of like for people who are engaged in lay life and have many obligations and responsibilities and don't have the luxury of, they don't have the life of being able to just focus on practice where meanwhile their needs are being taken care of. 2 hours a day is a challenge, right? Hour in the morning, hour in the evening. Maybe we have to sleep a little less to do that. Maybe we have to be online a little less to do that, or make sacrifices to do that, but it's still realistic. And it's a sufficient amount of time that the sitting practice can actually. Yeah, sorry, whoever just unmuted themselves, please mute yourself. Thanks. Did you catch that? It's a sufficient amount of time that we can really progress deeply in our practice, even if we have many other obligations. We have to be realistic and say, in the beginning, maybe I'm sitting half hour a day or 20 minutes a day because I'm a beginner, and that's wonderful, and I'll get benefit from that. And if I never go past that and I still get benefit, that's fine. I will never say that someone shouldn't do that. I would feel great joy that they got some benefit. But I like to treat everyone as if they have the ultimate aspiration to be a deeply realized practitioner. I will never assume they want less than that. So I will always speak from that standpoint. And from that standpoint, I have to say, if you're serious about practice, do it. Just go for it, man. Structure your life in such a way that you can do that. And be honest with yourself when you're avoiding that. 2 hours a day, you can do it. How many hours a day do we spend online? All of us doing stuff that we probably don't need to be doing. We can find that time if we want to. Yeah. So that's my answer.
Thank you so much.
And this is, when I say that kind of thing, it's not to shame anyone. Oh, I'm not doing 2 hours a day, I'm not serious. It's not the purpose at all. The purpose is to inspire and encourage that you can do it. You can be deeply realized. You can bring these methods to fruition, and all those writings and words of the past Zen masters, you will feel eventually as if you yourself could have said that. You can do it, every single one of you. So
do you feel like it has to be I'm so sorry.
What's
Just to follow up. Do you feel like it has to be kind of, you talk about structuring your life around it. Does it but it doesn't have to be necessarily, I mean, formal practice is great, but it doesn't have to be so you don't have to worry about it, right? You don't have to worry about these little details that we go into, because otherwise you get kind of exhausted. And then your energy runs out and you don't practice as much, I guess.
And exactly that kind of thing is what you don't need to worry about. Just find a teacher that you want to follow,
Okay.
put their instructions into practice, and don't look back.
Okay.
Life is short enough that that's enough
Okay.
to say.
Great. I realize we're a little bit over, but if there's one more, we might have time. And if you also have to go, very welcome to go.
I'm happy to hang out too. I have no problem. So
Great. Anything else? Or we can also close here. Ines?
Roshi, you said that we have to use the breath counting method as an anchor so that we can get concentrated and maybe overcome the gross activity. So how can we then self-check if we are in that kind of meditative absorption that you called samadhi? Is there a method to see that on our own during meditation or after we finish that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the second half? How can we do what?
How can we self-check if we were during the meditation in samadhi or in that kind of meditative absorption? Were we deep enough during the meditation or not? Or it was a dull practice, let's say. Is there a checker for that?
You will eventually recognize what samadhi is, and you will be able to know. I'm in some type of samadhi, or I'm not. We eventually are able to do that, but in the beginning stages of practice, there's no such thing as self-checking. It's not acceptable. And that's a harsh thing to say. I know the fashion in some quarters of the Buddhist world these days are for people to really kind of try to figure out their own practice path based on readings and so on. But from the standpoint of Zen, from the standpoint of Buddhist practice in general, Buddhism, I have to say there is no such thing as self-study and self-confirmation. There is always the going to a spiritual friend, guide, teacher to receive the instructions. And that is the person who confirms to us, or helps us to confirm, I should say. Because in the beginning, it's impossible for us to know. There are many states which we may think are samadhi. There are many experiences that arise in meditation, which are actually completely off the rails and mistaken directions. And we need to use the teacher and the texts, both, to know, oh, that's not it at all. And particularly in the Zen path, as I described in the beginning lecture, that the role of the teacher is so central. That's exactly why. The purpose of going to see the teacher is for the teacher to see our condition and state and say, yes, no, yes, do this, fix that, tweak that. So I feel so strongly about this that I will even tell people that beyond some basic methods, I mean, breath counting is a pretty harmless method in that if you go in a mistaken direction with it, you're not going to harm yourself, but you might be wasting your time. Okay, I don't mean you in general. So, but I always encourage people, try breath counting until you find a teacher, work with this method. It's a good method, safe method. And then later on, you can tweak it when you find your teacher. But generally speaking, if someone believes they can do Zen practice, Buddhist practice, without working with a teacher, I have to say it's a completely mistaken understanding. And I know that's not what you said, but when we talk about self-checking, my real quick and gut answer is, why? That's your teacher's job. So the first priority to find a teacher. The teacher may not be a Zen teacher, it could be in any tradition. We should seek the spiritual guide, the spiritual friend that all Buddhist traditions say we need to have, because that's, again, how the path is transmitted. And then you will reach a point where you can stand on your own 2 feet. And the teacher will tell you, okay, now you can self-guide. But it's important that we get that confirmation. Then we will know how to tell where our path is going, whether I'm in samadhi or not. That kind of stuff will become clear to us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? If not, I just want to say I really enjoyed being with you guys. I really appreciate your attention. I appreciate Aaron so much for setting this up. And the mission of Dharma Gates, I think it's amazing. I'm really happy to be involved. And if any of you have any questions that come out from this class we did today, you can feel free to reach out to me through the Korinji website. The instruction I gave you today is found in my first book. Not to plug my book, but if you want to review it, I basically gave you an abridged version of that. So it's there as a reference. That's why I wrote it. And I'm happy to be a resource for you. So please don't hesitate. And I hope I get to, some of you I have gotten to practice with in person. I hope I get to practice with more of you in person soon. I see 1 or 2 of you that I know I'm going to see soon. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'll be seeing you in Long Island next month.
Oh, good. Fantastic. Next month. Great.
The 19th. With
Looking
Dom.
forward to it. Fantastic.
Nice meeting you. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess we'll just wrap there. So I'll say a couple things, and folks are welcome to hop off and do the rest of your day. The main thing is that Dharma Gates is a 501c3 nonprofit, and so is Korinji. And we encourage you, if you got something out of this session, to contribute to one of those 2 places. And the extent to which we value projects like this, and also monasticism in the US is a relatively new and crazy project that we want to support, I believe. And so, yeah, I encourage you to give something somewhere for this session if you are a person with resources. And if you're not, don't worry about it. The Dharma can also be free, and instead maybe apply yourself to it. It's another way to go. And again, yeah, we have sessions going pretty regularly. We might slow down a little bit with online stuff over the summer, but we do have a half-day retreat with Kim Allen in a couple weeks, and we will have more things in a rolling basis. So it'd be great to see any of you guys again. And thank you again, Meido Roshi. This was a wonderful, wonderful session. So
thank you. Thank you so much.
And I'll hang out for a few more minutes if anybody has questions about Dharma Gates or anything else from this. You can stay if you'd like. Seems like Meido Roshi's also hanging out, so.
Oh, I'll take off. I'll let you handle things.
Thank you, Roshi.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.